Welcome back to KCDC. I want to give you all a quick note on what might have been a life-saving moment. Spokesman for Senator Joe Manchin told me that Manchin aided his colleague, Claire McCaskill, on Thursday at the Democratic policy lunch when she began choking on a piece of food. McCaskill started waving her hands, signaling she couldn't breathe and needed help. Another senator nearby attempted to help her before Manchin stepped in, lifted McCaskill out of her seat, and performed the Heimlich maneuver. A local journalist in St. Louis reported that McCaskill has said she suffered cracked ribs. We have reached out to their office, haven't heard back yet, and no word on exactly what they were having for lunch, but we're very glad that Senator McCaskill is okay. Now, though, for something completely different, joining me on set is Republican Congressman from Illinois, Representative Rodney Davis. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I think you probably share our gratitude that Senator McCaskill is okay.
Absolutely, I do. Claire, I'm glad you're okay, and Senator Manchin, great job.
Right? But I do want to talk about the issue at hand, which is, of course, immigration and what exactly the House is going to do. It seems as though, and I'd like to know what your assessment is of where things stand, but the compromise negotiations seem to have fallen apart late last week. Now there does seem to be some discussion of doing a separate standalone bill to address family separation. Is that the case, and would you support that?
Absolutely. I hope to co-sponsor it. But I hope we can actually get some movement on immigration reform. We've had a lot of people. Our leadership team has sat down with all facets of our Republican conference because we're not getting any assistance from the Democratic side to address these issues that all of us have said, you know, are bipartisan issues. Let's fix the dock issue. Let's secure a border. You know, there are areas of this border that have got to have a physical structure, not just with illegal immigration, but with drugs that are coming into our country and ravaging the Midwest and areas that I serve. We also need to address the separation of families, and we have to address how we deal with our immigration system at hand right now.
What do you think is the likeliest outcome here? Do you think that the House will vote on a separate standalone to end family separation? You
know, I'm optimistic, Casey. You know me, and I'm always the eternal optimist. I certainly hope so. I know those individuals, leadership, and the folks that have been talking about a good compromise are sitting down again this weekend, and they're working hard to try and come up with that solution. The president, when he came in to see us last week and talk to our conference, he was clear that he supported both of the bills that we were supposed to put on the floor last week.
Then he tweeted, though, why bother? Don't bother doing any of this because, you know, we have to win more seats to actually get something done. I mean, did that effectively kill any chance for that compromise legislation that was supposed to be on the floor last week?
If it killed any chance of compromise, nobody would have been talking this weekend to try and find that compromise. That's why you've got folks like Jeff Denham, David Valadao, Carlos Curbelo, Mario Diaz-Balart. These are Republicans that represent districts where immigration reform is much higher on the priority list for their constituents than many other districts that Republicans serve in our conference.
Sure.
These are the ones that are sitting down with leadership. I got to give our team a lot of credit for being able to sit down without any Democrat assistance and try and put together a good compromise. And I'm hopeful that we can see that this week.
Do you think the Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, other conservatives, are they negotiating in good faith? I've talked to a number of you colleagues who feel like they keep moving the goalposts, keep saying they'll support one thing and then changing their minds again and again.
Well, it's certainly very frustrating that we couldn't come up with a plan that really was the president's 4 pillars, border security, that actually funded a physical structure. It wasn't just authorization like most bills that we pass in Congress. Then we have to go back and vote again on the appropes. We lumped it all together. We also addressed the DACA population, 1.8 million. DACA and Dreamer kids would have been taken care of and been granted legal status.
In exchange for the wall.
In exchange for the wall. Exactly what many of my Democratic colleagues who have been working with Republicans on immigration reform have asked for. But it's getting too close to the election. The Democrats aren't going to come together and help us govern on this issue because they know this issue divides Republicans. So I'm hopeful that our leadership team, who's done a great job in making this happen, and frankly, I think there are some that are negotiating this that are a little more worried about where they may fall in the next leadership election rather than making our current leadership team look bad, rather than actually coming up with a solution.
You're talking about Steve Scalise and Kevin McCarthy?
No, I'm talking about people who don't want anyone in the current leadership team to remain in leadership after this election.
I see.
I think there's a lot of ambition when it comes to negotiating legislation right now.
A very interesting undercurrent. Okay, I want to also ask you, as you know, Utah's primary election for the Senate is set for Tuesday. Former governor and presidential candidate Mitt Romney has an op-ed in the Salt Lake Tribune today. It reads in part, quote, "I appreciate the argument made by those who believe we should stay silent, but I cannot subscribe to it. I know that any criticism may lessen the president's flexibility to enact policy with which I agree, but that end does not justify my silence in the face of things that matter." Do you think that Republicans need to show more courage in standing up to this president?
Well, there's the far right and the far left. No matter what we do, I'm never going to stand up enough for the president for the far right. And immediately when I agree to work with the president on issues like tax reform, immigration reform, the far left's going to say, why don't you just impeach him? We've got to get to the common sense voters that are independents and those that really make up middle America. You know, we've got to stop this politicizing everything like dinner. The fact that Sarah Sanders couldn't go to a restaurant because of who she works for and her political beliefs, that's not the majority of voters in this country. Donald Trump was elected, in my opinion, because of this move toward making everything politically correct in this country. And frankly, his campaign was the antithesis of political correctness, and he won. There are a lot of people that I serve in my district that voted because of what they see happening on the far right and the far left.
Do you think, I mean, this issue that we saw play out over the course of the last week, do you think it's a place where Republicans who couldn't stomach it actually stood up to the president? And do you think the president is right that his people love what they saw this week?
Well, I am not going to be able to answer the second part. I didn't hear or read what he said on that issue. But I can tell you there are a lot of people in our Republican conference that have varying views on immigration reform.
But on the family separation?
On the family separation, that's a policy that's not unique to just this administration, as we saw today with Jay Johnson's comments. But this is an issue where Republicans and Democrats should come together, and I would hope that we can to pass a bill to ensure that we fix policies so that the Flores decision isn't going to be a permanent precedence.
Congressman Davis, stay put. We're going to have you join our panel when we come back.